going to reveal a little bit about my past and tell a little bit of a story. And understand this was a very long time ago, and I'm a very different person than I was at that time. There's some similarities, but a lot is very different. So we tend to be fairly religious, especially at that time. And I had some circumstances in my life that were very difficult. I was doing very well, and through some very sad situations, I ended up completely bankrupt. I lost the business. I lost more money than I care to even think about. It just makes me sick when I think about it. But we ended up with absolutely nothing. Well, not nothing. I had an old Bronco, had 2 babies in the back, and I had $10,000. That was it. That was everything.
Well, you had your wife.
Yes. Yes. Hannah was there. Yes, I had Hannah. Thank heavens. Anyway, and I had you. Completely destitute of everything. We left Seattle and we started driving. And I was frustrated and I was scared and I was mad at the world and mad at God. And I told God, I said, you need to tell me what to do. I've been praying and praying and praying and I don't have a solution. You need to help me. You got to tell me what to do. And I said, I'm going to start driving and I'm not going to stop driving until you tell me what to do. It's not a good idea to challenge God, right? And so we started driving and we drove and we drove and we drove. Pretty soon we were at the Mexican border in Texas from Seattle. And I kept driving. And so we drove that truck all the way through Mexico. We crossed the Yucatan and we kept driving. And we entered Belize and we kept driving. And pretty soon I ran out of road. And I had told God, you know, I'm going to drive until you either tell me what to do or I run out of road. Well, you know where we ran out of road? We ran out of road 150 miles into the Belizean jungle on the border of Guatemala, where the road ran into a river and stopped. So I went until I literally ran out of road. 150 miles down a dirt road into the jungle.
I guess you could say it was the end of the road.
It was the end of the road. And guess who didn't answer me? Yeah. So there we were in Belize, and I said, well, I'm at the end of the road. And we really are at the end of our road. You know, we had nothing. And we were living in the car. And we didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody in
We had
Belize.
some of my favorite cast iron
Pans.
pans.
Yeah. Anyway, we didn't know anybody. And there we were in the jungle. And we had passed a little ways back. We had passed an orphanage. And so we went back about 20 or 30 miles. And we stopped at this orphanage. And it was run by a Christian organization. And there were volunteers there that were missionaries from the States that had come down to volunteer at the orphanage. And we asked them if there was anything they needed help with, and if we could volunteer and help them out for room and board. And so Hannah took care of some of the kids, and I was painting desks and door sills, and that fed us. We lived in the back of the truck in the jungle. Well, I ended up, somebody figured out that I knew something about computers and that I'd been a programmer. And they said, well, they don't have anybody to teach computer science at the school in Punta Gorda. And so I said, well, maybe I'll try that. And so I went to talk to the superintendent at the school. And sure enough, they let me teach school. So I got a job. And it didn't pay very much. We're in the jungle in Belize. And, well, it's not jungle in Punta Gorda, but it was a very small town. And this was, what, 25 years ago. So more than 25 years ago. And so I got a job and we rented a house. I don't know who we rented it from. I think somebody just rented it to us, and I don't know that we were paying the owner. It was abandoned. So we lived in this house quite a ways outside of town, and we had a 150-foot tall bush right next to us. There were jaguars in the back. There were flocks of parrots. There were snakes and bugs and tarantulas and scorpions, and there were flying cockroaches the size of your hand. It was the jungle. Very interesting, kind of scary. But I started teaching school there. And
that jungle was also like the Garden of Eden.
Oh yes, it was a Garden of Eden. We had all kinds of fresh fruit that was growing. We had breadfruit and mango and papaya and coconut and boysenberries and monkey apples and oranges and lemons and limes. It had been an old fruit orchard that was around this house. And so we had smoothies that were made with fresh fruit every morning. And we learned to eat lots of beans and rice. And this little Mayan woman taught Hannah how to make tortillas
From scratch.
from scratch. She didn't speak English, and we didn't speak Quechua Maya, but she showed us how to do it. And it was a nice time. We enjoyed our time in Belize, but this was back to the boat thing. So that's a little bit about the backstory to get to what I was going to talk about. So I was still praying, what are we going to do? Lord help us. What are we going to do now? And we were at our end of our rope, and we were at the end of the money, and we were at the end of everything. And I got this little feeling on the back of my neck, and a little voice in, whatever you call the still small voice or something, said, build a boat. The old Bill Cosby comic about Noah and the ark came to mind, and I'm like, oh, right, God, you want me to build an ark. Okay, that's funny. Haha. Right? So I took it to heart, though, and I said, okay, I'm going to build a boat. And so at the time, you could buy a mahogany tree, 6 foot in diameter, 200 feet tall, for about $1,500. And you had to pay about another $1,000 to get it hauled out of the jungle. The Mayans would drag it through the jungle, put it in the river, and they'd float it down the river and give you a tree. We still got to cut the tree up into boards to do anything with. But I identified 2 huge mahogany trees in the jungle, and I was going to buy them. And I identified a Garifuna man. The Garifuna are a tribe of ex-slaves that escaped, and they made their home in southern Belize, and they kept all of their traditions from Africa. And they're still down there in south of Punta Gorda right now. But they know how to make dugouts, and they're really good working with wood. And so I got a piece of software to design hulls, and I designed some hulls, and I tested them in a virtual water tank, and came up with a design that I thought was pretty good. And I printed out a picture, and I took this picture to this old Garifuna man, and I said, could you make me this? And he looked at it one time, and he said, yeah. I came back to him about a week later, and he had hand carved the hull exactly to the picture. He looked at it one time, and he says, like this? I was like, wow, yeah, like that. And so we were going to use these 2 mahogany trees to build a catamaran. And as things went, it turned out that I actually got a job in the U.S. A friend of mine called me, says, you need to come back and work this contract. And so we did. And for years after that, I kind of figured that God figured I was going to kill myself if I built a boat. So in the end, I made enough money working this contract that we could buy Sea Frog. And so instead of building a boat, I ended up buying Sea Frog. Okay, so that was the beginnings of our boat. I'd never sailed before. I didn't know anything about boating, and I was so bold as to think I could build my own boat. Whatever. How hard can it be? I'll just build a boat. Yeah. Hey folks, like, subscribe, tell your friends. It really does help, and it helps the channel grow. It helps us get higher in the search engines. And if you do feel like you can, please donate and help us out on the journey and help us restore this boat. We have a Patreon link. We also have a PayPal link on our website. And I'm like, what? And the old comics. Wait a minute.